on this computer. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this morning, and happy Valentine's Day. I'm Kathy O'Connell, and I'm the founder of Inclusive Wedding Planning, and I'm so excited that you're watching today because that probably means you are engaged. It probably means you're getting married, and it probably means you need some help. So I welcome you. I'm excited for you to be here for our inaugural kickoff of our new conversations and to be here to really help celebrate our new launch, because we're launching inclusiveweddingplanning.com today, and we've got more exciting things coming. So go to the www.inclusiveweddingplanning.com and you'll learn more about what's coming, how we're here to help you, and how to really create a space for you to safely, wonderfully, and happily and joyfully plan your upcoming wedding. To that, I've created this show so that we can help educate and inspire and give you leaders and pathfinders in the industry to talk to. And I'm so excited today to have here with me Kirsten Palladino and her wife Maria, who are the founders of Equally Wed. And if you are new to wedding planning, you may not know anything about equallywed.com. And I really want you guys to first share. Tell me about Equally Wed. What are you all about, and how are you here to help all these wonderful couples who are engaged?
Yeah,
sure. Do you want to kick it off?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So equallywed.com is an online wedding magazine for LGBTQ plus couples and our allies, and it centers on the LGBTQ plus wedding planning experience. So we are the only types of couples who we are speaking to and speaking about. So we feature real LGBTQ plus weddings around the world, honeymoons, engagements, proposals, double proposals, where to travel in the world on your honeymoon that it is safe, where you're going to feel comfortable holding hands. We cover how to find LGBTQ plus inclusive vendors and what that means. We talk about everything that's under the sun that you're going to encounter when planning your wedding, whether you're dealing with homophobia or transphobia in the wedding industry or your own family. How to address your invitations, all of those things we cover on equallywed.com.
Just a fantastic resource for information, and also a great source for finding vendors, right? Isn't this a good way for couples to go? I keep hearing stories from couples around the world that make a phone call to person they think is the best wedding planner in town. Yep. And as soon as that person finds out that they are not a heterosexual couple, they close the door in their face. We actually have friends who went to a wedding venue ready to book it. And once they found out that this was not two girls, just the brides, not the bridesmaid helping, the brides, they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't do gay weddings." And think about how awful that feels. Here you are in this exciting joy of planning your wedding, the most fun time ever, and you've got people saying no. So talk about the vendors on your site and why they are good people for our people to talk.
Sure, yeah. So it's really important that we work with vendors and venues that really believe in marriage equality and are not just there to take all the money, but really want to celebrate and affirm LGBTQ plus love. So we have a variety of vendor categories, florists, venues, photographers, planners, stationers, cake makers, et cetera, everybody that you'd need for your wedding. And we work with our vendors to make sure that they are LGBTQ plus inclusive. What we also love and encourage is for our vendors to go through our LGBTQ plus inclusive certification course over on equallywedpro.com, because then they're not only are they excited about working with LGBTQ plus couples, but they're also making that extra effort to learn about the most updated language with working with LGBTQ plus couples and just best practices overall. Obviously we're not a monolith, that we're all different, but there are some universal experiences that we've learned about through running Equally Wed for the last 12 years. It's not just our experience, as a married LGBTQ plus couple, but we're just talking through the experience of planning the weddings with people from all over the world and how they're experiencing homophobia and transphobia, or just the anxiety alone of not only planning a wedding, which is a big job, and it helps to have someone like you walking them through it, but then also then that additional worry of having to come out every single time and not knowing if somebody's going to hang up the phone and all that. So we really want to match our readers up with vendors who understand that and want to make it make the planning experience safe and welcoming and just take that extra unnecessary stress out of it.
Right. Absolutely. And we also try to connect with them when we see things that they're not maybe demonstrating as best as possible in regards to even just their listings and their advertising on our site. We want to make sure they might not know. So we like to educate them as much as possible. If we see something like an advertising linking over to a landing page that has just a bunch of straight couples on it, we like to bring it up because we're a smaller business, but we want to be hands-on with them to say, look, you're going to have a better reach. You're not speaking the language of the couples we're sending to you.
Right.
And most of them, all of them, if they're not, we'd like to work with them even more, but most of them are always very receptive to say, absolutely, we're doing, we're changing that for 2022, or we're in the, thank you for that. We didn't think of it that way, and sometimes it's just a little bit of that education to make sure that they are really speaking the love language for the couples that we're sending their direction as well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how you said that, the love language, because it really is, we're in the love business. I mean, we really are. Everyone who's in the wedding business. And at first, I can't fathom how somebody would not be expressing love to some couple in this moment of their lives.
True.
I know.
But we have to have that love language.
Yes.
But let's talk about language, because this originally started out as gay wedding planning. It is now inclusive wedding planning, actually, thanks to you, Kirsten, because I heard you speak at Wedding MBA this summer, and you made a really good point that word gay is limiting, and it only defines a certain portion of this expansive, inclusive community. So say again, some of what you said, and I think you're changing the industry with some of your discussion of vocabulary.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And I'm so glad that resonated with you. When we're looking at our community, whether we identify as lesbian, gay, queer, trans, non-binary, it's easy to look at it from one perspective, but when we call it the gay community, we are excluding anyone who doesn't identify as gay, especially our trans siblings. As some people may not know or think deeply about this, but being transgender has nothing to do with your sexual orientation. It's the gender identity. And, trans people may or may not identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual, pansexual, and that's completely separate. So when we say gay community or gay weddings, we're leaving out a whole slew of people who are very valuable, important to us in our community. When we say queer weddings, we're leaving out a bunch of people do not use that word around me. Right. And not just, our senior LGBTQ plus members, but
like me. I mean, literally, when I grew up, that was not a word you used.
Right. Yeah. But even so Maria and I, we live in Atlanta, Georgia, and there are people in our state, but also around the world, who are 22 years old and submitting their weddings to us or having conversations with us on social media saying, no, that word does not define me. I don't want it to be called the queer community. And so we may be headed in that direction eventually, but I encourage people in and outside of the community, but especially outside of our community, to not refer to us as the queer community yet. Because we're just not there. And then same goes for, same-sex weddings. That's exclusionary of trans folks as well. So we just really want, we want to be inclusive, and it's not that we didn't intend to be inclusive. It's just that we're all learning about how to make sure everyone feels safe and welcome. So LGBTQ plus is one of the most inclusive ways you can talk about our entire community. And of course, we can add more and more letters to that.
Right, which is my next question. How do you decide how many letters to use?
Right. I think in written form, you definitely go all out, the 2S for two-spirit, I for intersex, more A's for asexual and agender. But when you're saying it out loud, it can be a tongue twister. So it's it's about how dedicated you are, really. I think, I mean,
Absolutely. And
personal.
I think a lot of people often shorten it to just LGBT, and we have to have that plus still. Like
Right.
if you're going to shorten it to anything,
Yes.
just LGBTQ plus, because
Right. Yes.
that last piece is so important to a tremendous amount of the community.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think also an important but not fun point to make is that transphobia is not just outside of our community. It is,
No.
you
Yeah.
know, hot and wild up
Yeah.
in the LGBTQ plus community, where cisgender gays and lesbians are having really toxic feelings about our trans siblings, and when we even hint at leaving out the T, then it's it can just it just further pushes that divide, and we don't want that. So that's why we want to make sure we include those folks.
Exactly. Yeah. Notice on your website, it's LGBTQ plus. And I think, we're deciding that. So talk to me about bride and groom.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's still such a I just married really, really good friends of ours. I've known the bride when the bride, the bride's trans. I've known the bride for years. When she was a friend of my nephew, is still a very good friend of my nephew. But her non-binary partner, fiance, refused to be called a bride. So
sure.
what do we use?
Yeah, well, so there's so many different options. I first like to say that there's nothing wrong with the term bride and nothing wrong with the term groom. It's going to land well with some people, and it's not going to land well with others. We like to use the term marrier. It's something that I plucked out of the dictionary for someone who is getting married frequently, but I've altered that to mean someone, gender neutral term for someone getting married. And we've been using that at Equally Wed for like 7 years or so. And I think it's a great way to say, I'm getting married and I don't identify as a bride or a groom. But Maria actually chose a different word for. I
use broom just because I didn't identify really as a bride or a groom. We kind of made it up ourselves, but then found out it later was actually used in an earlier Sex and the City episode when the two gentlemen had gotten married. So, but yeah, there's a lot of like me that just you don't fit in either, and you need something else. And there's other people. Some people just like, don't call me anything, use my name. But I think it's important to figure out what is truly feels amazing while you're planning your wedding,
right.
Obviously,
because the wedding's about you and no one else,
right?
And it's not, we're not trying to appease anyone. I mean, this is a celebration of you two or more coming together, and this is about your unity. So you need to feel the most comfortable. You need to feel special and validated and affirmed before anybody else showing up, or your vendors, or your guests, or your parents, whatever. You're the most important thing on that day. And so, and there's also other words. We've had some couples on Equally Wed who've used two brides. They definitely identified as brides. One was more butch, one was more femme. And so they decided to be the tux bride and the gown bride. And that's how they had their vendors refer to them, because they said their vendors were getting confused. So, I mean, people they go with a lot of different fun terms, and it's whatever works for you.
Well, and I think that gets back to what I think is so important in choosing vendors. I've got my whole team trained to ask the question. Yes. We don't know how you want to be referred to unless we ask you. You cannot make assumptions in any way, shape, or form. So, which is maybe a key clue of a way to choose a vendor. So how would you suggest or recommend these couples start picking vendors, finding vendors? How do they choose the best people for them?
Right. Oh, it's such a good question. And it is such a big part of making your wedding incredibly meaningful and a good experience, because I do say that planning weddings it's a stressful thing. So you want to alleviate stress wherever you can. And the first thing that we recommend, obviously, you can come to the equallywed.com directory to look for vendors in your area who are LGBTQ plus inclusive. But we like, if you're going on Instagram and you're looking at that vendor's work, you want to see not only do they have, gorgeous floral arrangements, or they really look like they have it together as a planner, or take gorgeous photos. Do you see anybody who looks like you? And, of course, I mean, LGBTQ plus is the first thing, but also, do you see people similar size, similar color? What you see is a reflection of how the vendor sees you as a priority. So if you're not seeing any LGBTQ plus couples, they may have never shot an LGBTQ plus wedding, but it doesn't mean that they can't. It's just that they haven't. And so that's just a little signal like, okay, I might have to do a little bit of extra educating here. Am I prepared to do that emotional labor?
Right.
And then, if their website is, all bride and groom or only talks to the brides, that may be a red flag for you. Now, of course, I've talked to many, many vendors around the world who are very excited to work with LGBTQ plus couples, but haven't adapted their language to be more inclusive. So it's not always like, huge red flags, but if that's important to you and you don't, which, I know that it is, but we're all different. Some of us have a higher tolerance level of like, okay, yeah, I can get over that because their photos are amazing, but that's something to look for. And then obviously, as we talked about earlier, when making that phone call, I like to be really upfront and say, hey, we're an LGBTQ plus couple getting married. How do you feel about that? And just wait and see what they say. And, sometimes they'll hang up. But how they respond is everything. And what I hear a lot of vendors say is that this happens to them. They get this call or they get this email and it breaks their heart. And they say, I can't even believe you had to ask. Yeah. And that's when that they might be the one for you.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Also 2 points on that too, I think, is trust your gut.
Yeah.
Sometimes, the feeling you might have on the phone will sway you in one direction or the other if you are having to ask the question. And also, there are a lot of fantastic, like we may be talking to somebody that's in New York City right now, or somebody that's in a small rural town in another state, in the Midwest. You may not have a tremendous amount of vendors in your area that you can work with that are LGBTQ plus, not just friendly, but inclusive and affirming. And so if it's important to you, just know that there are amazing vendors that will travel to you for your wedding. You may have to cut back in one area to be able to accommodate their travel needs. But if something's super important, like for us, when we got married, photography and certain things within it was super important. So we knew we were slicing down in some of our budget to make sure we got exactly that vendor we wanted, because the photos were going to be, especially our engagement photos and all that, it was going to be an intimate moment for us. And I'm kind of self-conscious.
Maria is the furthest thing from self-centered.
But so I wanted to feel comfortable with a photographer because I knew we were inviting them into our like lovey space. And so we knew like, we're going to spend whatever we need to spend for that. And then slice down over here if we need to. Right. So I think that's important too, is that especially like, if you're on Instagram, you're to see those vendors that are just out there showcasing those couples that look like us and want to service us and celebrate us. You can get them to fly to you and for your wedding day too.
Right. And then one other point I want to make before we, is that if you find that one true gem, like a florist you love, or a planner you love, or a photographer, whoever it is that you kind of want to build on, and that person is LGBTQ plus inclusive and affirming and honors your gender expression, all of that, ask them for their creative network, their professionals. Say, hey, I really want a planner who's just as amazing as you. I want to work with a caterer who knows, the LGBTQ plus community inside and out. Who do you recommend? And go off of their network, because that at one, they're all going to work better together. And then I also think, I think it's always best to work with a planner first, because they're the ones that are going to have this incredible network. Shout out to Kathy. But no matter which vendor it is, going off of who they love to work with, because they know people behind the scenes, they're going to know who they really are, not just who they are, on social media. So, and then the other thing is like scope out LGBTQ plus real weddings, on equallywed.com. But now, luckily they're everywhere. When we started, they were nowhere, which is why we started. But if you go through the vendor list, then most likely, they're going to be have been wonderful in that wedding, because usually if we feature weddings and I'm like, well, wait, who did the cake? You didn't mention them. They're like, they were actually really homophobic. Do not mention
so they're not getting listed.
Yeah, they don't list them. So anyway, that's just another great way to find people.
Yeah. And that's such a good point, because this really is a wonderful, it's $1 billion business, but it's a small community. Exactly. And we all know each other. We all support each other. And I really think for couples listening that you've got to start and reach out with people who know and love you to begin with, that'll help take
Right.
you down the road through your journey, which is really,
Absolutely.
really fun.
Right.
Yeah.
But let's get personal. You guys work together. You're let's talk about how you make that happen.
Oh, well,
How does that work?
How does it work?
How does
We're
it
still
work?
trying to figure that out, right?
well, so we're coming up on 18 years together.
Yes. Something like that. 13 married, I guess.
And we got the idea for Equally Wed when we were planning our own wedding. So we've Equally Wed is going to be 12 in March and will be 13 in June
Right.
for our wedding. I think we just have mutual respect for each other's talents and skills. And then also we have different talents and skills. So we're not working on top of each other. We just, I have my niche or my area of work, and then Maria has their area of work.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
else would you?
No, I think that's why it works. And we take our moments and space, but no, I think in general, like most people just could even just, with this whole pandemic and the virtual world, most people are like, I couldn't even if you don't do the business together, I couldn't even work in the same house with my partner or wife or husband, that long. But it's worked. And yeah, I think it's been fun too. And it's still like, it's these love stories. So we're constantly like, I walk in and she's tearing up again about some new rural wedding. We're looking at the photos. So, when you love what you're doing, then we kind of just able to complement, the business together as well. So.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And 13 years, and we'll be 13 years in July.
In July, fantastic.
Really, it's a milestone, and
Great.
life has its ups and downs. So talk about how you guys have navigated, that many years together, 13 years married. What has made it work? How have you weathered ups and downs?
Yeah, for me, a lot of my downs in our marriage has been the loss of a lot of special family members, and Maria's just been my rock throughout it all, and that's just been, Maria's my up in all the downs.
I love it.
Yeah, I guess maybe. I don't know. We try to.
We had some health scares.
Communicate. We. I don't know. I just got to kind of recenter and know that those moments are coming. And don't think that they're knocking you off of your hill completely. They may just bump you down together, but recenter back on what is really good in the relationship and what's amazing. And I think when we kind of circle back to that, we find kind of our center as a couple again. We have twin 10-year-old boys. So, that causes
that keeps you grounded
in our world too, but they're the important part of our nucleus now as a family. So, that's another thing we work towards, is that our relationship needs to be strong, and what we showcase for them, a loving home, a loving relationship, and what we want for them is important too. So I think that adds another aspect as well, that we want to be strong for them, but we need to be strong as a couple for the main reason, even separate of our children.
I think also we've learned a lot along the way. I definitely had, rose-colored glasses, fairy tale ideals when entering into our marriage. But I have realized that marriage takes work. Marriage takes check-ins. Like, how are you feeling? How am I doing? Am I fulfilling your needs? How did you feel after that last argument? Or did we resolve that? Or things like that, I didn't ever expect that was what happened in a marriage. But really, I've just had to, Kathy, you're a therapist. No, but I've had to do a lot of growing up and realizing what, romantic communication is all about outside of, whining and dining and fun picnics in the mountains, so it's.
Well, back to that whole love language. That whole cliche of the book and everything, and figuring out what your partner's love language is and doing the work to speak it, because it's probably not yours and it's going to be different, and you want them to speak yours. So make sure that you're speaking theirs. And I think that's the same, like we talked about with vendors. You need to make sure that they understand what it is that you want as a couple for your wedding, and they need to speak your language. They're there just, they're doing the business because they love it, but they're there to serve you in that amount of time that you're. And I think that we do that as couples, and we need that from our wedding team as well.
Yeah, I love it. So what would you say to your engaged selves, looking back to your 13 years ago? What would you be? You're sitting in a room with your yourselves 13 years
Right.
ago? What would
That's a
you tell
great
you? What would you
question.
do differently? What would you change? What would you say to yourselves?
I would say, relax. It's not that big of a deal. You know, like Maria forgot the menus on the wedding day.
Well, we had them, but we didn't get them out.
Or,
'Cause
yeah,
we,
like,
yeah.
or you know,
I would say we would probably both say, which we didn't do. I don't know why, and it's going to be very offensive, Kathy. I'm sorry. We didn't have a wedding planner.
yeah.
Shame on you.
I know, it's terrible.
I know.
And I think we were just juggling our budget and doing some stuff on our own and whatever. And that was one thing that we didn't, and I would recommend that for everybody.
Yes,
Things would have run a lot smoother.
Right.
It went great. It was
It did.
fantastic. Not that much was missed, but we had to be on top of things a little more on that wedding day that we shouldn't have had to been,
Right.
even like food and is it coming out at the right time and stuff like that. So that as far as, yes, like relax, enjoy it. I mean, like you grow this many years, you learn to find more comfort and peace within yourself and who you are. And so it is, be exactly what you want to be, the way you want to be it on that day. Don't ask for, any forgiveness or any acceptance from anybody else. You just need to have it for yourself and truly enjoy it. I think that's what I would probably, I would pick a different suit. I mean, there'd be a ton of different things now style wise, but as far
It
as
looked
like,
really cute. I just read your article. It was really cute.
I'm trying to remind myself that it's that many years ago and fashion was different,
It was cute for 2009 what we wore. But yeah, we would definitely do that differently. But yeah, I mean, for me, I had a very extensive itinerary that I handed out to all the vendors, and I was trying to be a showrunner and a bride all in the same day, and it was very stressful. And so I wish that, I mean, no, I don't have any regrets, but I would tell our engaged selves, like, just go ahead and get that planner. Let somebody else take some of that off your shoulders.
Exactly. Well, and that's my goal with inclusive wedding planning, is to help those couples who maybe can't afford a full wedding planner, but they know they need help to navigate the process. And then at the end, we'll help them find someone to manage the day for them using your directory, using our resources, because
that's great.
It's really hard to do this alone. And we really want everyone to have fun.
Right.
And it's hard to have fun when you're worrying about the timeline.
Right.
Very true. Tell you what to do.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's
I completely agree.
And is there anything else you'd want to tell these fabulous couples? I'm sure we have some vendors listening too. So if you're a vendor and you're not certified, go to equallywedpro.com or at equallywed on Instagram, figure it out, because you need to be. But what about these couples? Anything else you'd want to say to let everyone know what's important?
Well, first, congratulations if you're newly engaged. It is a very exciting journey, and with a lot of ups, and so I'm just hoping you have a lot of ups and very minimum amount of downs. But there are resources out there for you throughout it all. And best wishes.
Awesome.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You guys are amazing. I just can't wait to hug you in person. We're
I
going to
know,
make
right?
that happen.
We're gonna be out there soon.
I know. Yeah.
My wife is hiding, listening, so you'll get to meet her too eventually.
Okay,
That's sweet. That's so sweet. Yeah.
And I just think you're just beautiful and doing a really, really great service in the world. And that's just so important. So if you haven't yet, equallywed.com is where you'll find these guys and you'll find their information. inclusiveweddingplanning.com is where you'll find me and all of our resources. New stuff being launched every day, so pay attention to that. And again, I just wish and offer you all love and peace and joy and bliss on your planning journey. And we'll check in and talk to you in the next few weeks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.